The poker game that sealed Penelope Garrett's fate lasted exactly 47 minutes, though she wouldn't learn about it until 3 days later when her father stumbled home reeking of whiskey and defeat. It was 1878 in Salina, Kansas, and women still had no say in the transactions that determined their lives, especially when those transactions took place across green felt tables in smoke-filled saloons where desperation met opportunity and rarely walked away unscathed. Penelope stood at the kitchen window of their modest farmhouse, watching the summer sun paint the wheat fields gold. At 21, she had the kind of beauty that came from good bones and hard work, her chestnut hair thick and shining, her green eyes reflecting the prairie sky. She had strong hands that knew how to knead bread, mend fences, and coax vegetables from stubborn Kansas soil. Her mother had died 3 years prior from consumption, leaving Penelope to manage both the household and her father's increasingly reckless behavior. The door slammed open with enough force to rattle the dishes in the cupboard. Marcus Garrett stood in the doorway, his shirt stained and his eyes bloodshot. He was 45 but looked 60, worn down by whiskey and poor choices. Penelope turned from the window, her stomach already sinking at the expression on his face. "Papa, you look terrible. Let me fix you some coffee," she said, reaching for the pot on the stove. "Coffee won't fix this," Marcus said, his voice rough. He stumbled to the table and collapsed into a chair. "Nothing's going to fix this." Penelope set the coffee cup in front of him anyway, her hand steady despite the tremor of fear working its way up her spine. "What happened?" "I lost." "Lost what? How much money this time?" She tried to keep the accusation from her voice, but it crept in anyway. They had so little, and what they had he seemed determined to gamble away. The farm, the house, everything. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "And I couldn't pay the debt, so I promised the only thing I had left." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Penelope gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. "What did you promise?" "Thomas Winters said he'd forgive the debt if you'd marry him." The name landed like a physical blow. Thomas Winters owned the largest cattle operation in 3 counties, a sprawling ranch that stretched for thousands of acres. He was also known for his cruelty. His first wife had died under mysterious circumstances. His second wife had run away, and when they found her 2 towns over, she refused to say what had driven her to flee with nothing but the clothes on her back. Rumors swirled about beatings, about locked rooms, about screams in the night that the ranch hands pretended not to hear. "No." The word came out barely above a whisper. "Papa, you cannot be serious." "It's done, Penny. I shook his hand on it. You're to marry him in 2 weeks. "I won't do it." "You cannot sell me like livestock." Her voice rose, anger burning through the fear. "Thomas Winters is a monster. Everyone knows what he did to his wives." Marcus finally looked at her, and what she saw in his face was worse than anger or authority. It was defeat, and beneath that, a terrible selfishness. "You will do this, or we'll both be on the street. Winters owns the note on this property now. He could throw us out tomorrow if he wanted. Then let him throw us out. I would rather live in a tent on the prairie than marry that man." "You don't know what you're saying. You're young and foolish. Winters is a wealthy man. You'll live in comfort, have fine dresses, never want for anything. Except freedom, except safety, except any hope of happiness." Penelope's hands shook as she pressed them flat against the table. "How could you do this? How could you trade your own daughter to cover your gambling debts?" Marcus stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the wooden floor. "I did what I had to do. The matter is settled. You'll marry Thomas Winters, and that's final." He walked out, leaving Penelope alone in the kitchen with her racing heart and the sound of her own ragged breathing. That night, Penelope lay awake in her small bedroom, staring at the ceiling and trying to find a way out. She had no money of her own, No relatives who could take her in. The few friends she had were either married or living with their own families, struggling to make ends meet in this harsh land. She could run, but where would she go? A woman alone on the prairie was vulnerable to dangers both human and natural. Without resources or protection, she would likely end up in a worse situation than the one she was fleeing. The next morning, she went about her chores in a daze, feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, weeding the vegetable garden. Her mind worked constantly, searching for options, finding none. By afternoon, she decided she needed air, space to think. She saddled their old mare, Daisy, and rode into town. Salina was a growing community, benefiting from its position on the railroad line. The main street bustled with activity. Wagons rolled past loaded with supplies. Women in bonnets hurried between the general store and the dress shop. Men gathered outside the saloon, talking business and weather. Penelope tied Daisy to a hitching post outside the mercantile and went inside, not because she needed anything, but because she needed to be somewhere other than that house with its walls closing in around her. Martha Henderson, the shopkeeper's wife, greeted her with a warm smile that faded when she saw Penelope's face. "My dear, what's wrong? You look as though you've seen a ghost." The kindness in Martha's voice nearly broke Penelope's composure. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, aware of the other customers in the store. How could she explain what her father had done? The shame of it burned in her chest. "I'm fine, Mrs. Henderson, just tired." Martha studied her with shrewd eyes that had seen too much of life to be fooled by a polite lie. "Come to the back with me for a moment, dear." In the small storage room behind the counter, surrounded by barrels of flour and bolts of fabric, Martha took Penelope's hands in her own. "Now tell me the truth." The whole story came pouring out. The gambling, the debt, the arrangement with Thomas Winters. Martha's expression grew darker with each word. "Your father had no right," Martha said when Penelope finished. "No right at all to promise you to that man. Everyone knows Thomas Winters is cruel as a snake. His poor wives," she stopped, pressing her lips together. "You cannot marry him, Penelope." "I don't see how I can avoid it. If I refuse, he'll take the farm anyway and my father will have nothing, and I'll still have nothing. At least this way, Papa keeps a roof over his head. That's his burden to bear, not yours. He gambled away his property. That's not your fault, and you shouldn't have to sacrifice yourself to fix his mistakes." Martha squeezed Penelope's hands. "Give me a day to think. Let me ask around, see if anyone knows of a situation where you might work, somewhere you could go. There has to be another way." Penelope felt a flicker of hope, small and fragile as a candle flame in the wind. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson, truly." She left the mercantile feeling slightly less desperate, though still trapped. She stood on the wooden sidewalk, trying to decide whether to go home or delay the inevitable a while longer, when a commotion down the street caught her attention. A group of men stood outside the land office, their voices raised in anger. At the center of the group stood Thomas Winters himself. Penelope recognized him instantly, though she had managed to avoid crossing paths with him for years. He was tall and broad-shouldered, probably handsome if you didn't know what lay beneath the surface. His hair was dark, touched with silver at the temples, and he wore expensive clothes tailored to fit his frame. His face was hard, his eyes cold as creek water in winter. "The contract was clear," Winters was saying, his voice carrying down the street. "That land is mine now, bought and paid for. If you can't accept that, take it up with a judge." A smaller man, rail, thin, and desperate-looking, stepped forward. "You took advantage. My wife was sick, and I needed money for the doctor. You knew I'd have no way to pay you back. That's not my problem. You signed the papers. Should have read them more carefully." Winters turned away, dismissing the man entirely. The thin man's hands clenched into fists. "You're a thief and a cheat, Winters. Everyone knows it." Winters spun back around, and the movement was so fast, so threatening, that the thin man stumbled backward. "Careful what you say, Henderson. I could sue you for slander, or I could just beat some sense into you right here." Henderson. Penelope realized with a start that this was Martha's husband, John. She had heard about their troubles, their farm that they had lost, but she hadn't known Winters was the one who took it from them. "You want to try?" John Henderson's voice shook, but he stood his ground. "I've got nothing left to lose, thanks to you." Before Winters could respond, another man stepped between them. He was tall, taller even than Winters, with broad shoulders and the sun-weathered skin of someone who spent his days outdoors. He wore simple ranch clothes, a worn hat pushed back on his head, and his boots were dusty from travel. What struck Penelope most were his eyes, a clear blue that seemed to take in everything at once, and the calm authority in his stance. "That's enough." The man's voice was quiet, but it carried weight. "John, go home to Martha. This isn't going to end well for you." "Stay out of this, Ingram," Winters said, but there was a note of caution in his voice that hadn't been there before. "Can't do that, Thomas. John's a friend, and you're about 2 seconds from doing something you'll regret." The tall man, Ingram, kept his position between the two men, his body relaxed but ready. "Why don't you move along? I'm sure you've got business to attend to." "This is my business. And this is the last time I'll tell you to step aside." "No." Ingram's tone didn't change, but something in his eyes did. It was the look of a man who had faced down danger before and come out on top. "You've taken enough from the Hendersons. Let it be." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other, and Penelope held her breath. The street had gone quiet, everyone watching to see what would happen. Finally, Winters stepped back. "You'll regret interfering, Ingram." But he walked away, his boots heavy on the wooden sidewalk. John Henderson sagged with relief. "Thank you, Samuel. If you hadn't been here, don't mention it. But he's right about one thing. You can't win against him in a fight. He's got too many men working for him, and he doesn't fight fair." Samuel Ingram clapped John on the shoulder. "Go on home now." Penelope watched as John Henderson walked away, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The crowd began to disperse, people returning to their business now that the show was over. Samuel Ingram remained standing in the street, and as he turned, his eyes met Penelope's across the distance. She should have looked away, should have hurried to her horse and ridden home. Instead, she found herself unable to move as he walked toward her. Up close, she could see that he was probably in his late 20s, with a strong jaw and a mouth that looked like it smiled easily, though it wasn't smiling now. There was a kindness in his face that seemed at odds with the hardness required to stand up to men like Thomas Winters. "Afternoon, miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Sorry you had to witness that unpleasantness." "You were very brave," Penelope said, then felt foolish for the simple words. Standing up to him like that. Not brave, just tired of watching him terrorize good people. Samuel studied her face, and she saw the moment recognition dawned. "You're Marcus Garrett's daughter, aren't you?" Penelope, her stomach dropped. "How did you know?" "Word travels in a town this size. I'm sorry about your situation. That's a raw deal you've been handed." The sympathy in his voice was almost worse than the fear. "Everyone knows." "Not everyone, but enough. I heard about it last night at the boarding house where I'm staying. Mrs. Cooper was talking to one of her other boarders about it, saying what a shame it was." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Thomas Winters is a bad man, Miss Garrett. I don't know if anyone's told you that plainly, but you deserve to know the truth. I've heard the rumors about his wives. They're not just rumors. I knew his first wife, Eleanor. Sweet woman, always had a kind word for everyone. After she married Winters, she changed. Became quiet, nervous, jumped at shadows. When she died, the doctor said it was a fall down the stairs, but Alina was one of the most sure-footed people I ever knew. She grew up on a ranch, could ride before she could walk. She didn't just fall. Penelope's hands trembled. She clasped them together to hide it. Then why hasn't anyone done anything? Why hasn't he been arrested? No proof, just suspicions. And Winters has money, which buys him a lot of protection in this world. Samuel's jaw tightened. His second wife, Margaret, she got away at least. Last I heard, she had made it to her sister's place in Colorado and refused to come back, even when Winters threatened legal action. My father promised me to him to cover a gambling debt. The words came out flat, drained of emotion. I don't want to marry him. I would rather die than marry him, but I don't have any choice. Samuel was quiet for a moment, his blue eyes thoughtful. There's always a choice, Miss Garrett. Sometimes the choices are all bad, but they exist. What choice do I have? Run away with no money and no place to go, refuse to marry him and watch my father lose everything. Those aren't really choices. Those are just different versions of disaster. What if there was another way? Samuel said slowly, "What if you didn't have to marry Winters at all?" Hope flared in Penelope's chest, painful in its intensity. "What do you mean?" "I own a ranch about 10 miles outside of town. It's not as big as Winters' spread, but it's good land, and I've built it into a successful operation. I've been meaning to find a wife, someone to help build a life with, but I haven't had much time for courting." He took off his hat, turning it in his hands. "What if you married me instead?" Penelope stared at him, certain she had misheard. "I don't understand." "I know it sounds crazy. We've just met, and I'm sure you don't know anything about me except that I stood up to Winters just now. But hear me out." Samuel met her eyes directly. "You need to escape this arrangement with Winters. I need a wife. We could make an agreement, a practical arrangement. You'd be safe on my ranch and you'd have a home, security. I promise you I'm not like Winters. I would never raise a hand to you, never lock you in a room or treat you like property. You'd have freedom to live your life, to be yourself. But you don't know me either. Why would you offer this? Because it's the right thing to do. Because I can't stand by and watch Winters claim another victim when I have the power to prevent it." He put his hat back on. "Look, I'm not saying you have to decide right now. Think about it. But your wedding to Winters is in 2 weeks. If you want an alternative, you need to decide soon." "What about my father's debt? Winters will still own the note on our farm." "How much does your father owe him?" $1,500 plus the farm itself." Samuel let out a low whistle. "That's a considerable sum. Your father must have had a very bad night." "He has a lot of bad nights." Penelope felt disloyal saying it, but it was the truth. "I can't match that kind of money," Samuel admitted, "but I can offer you safety and a decent life. That has to count for something." It counted for everything, Penelope thought. But could she really marry a complete stranger? Even a kind stranger was still unknown, still a risk. Then again, what choice did she really have? Thomas Winters was a known danger. Samuel Ingram was at least a possibility of something better. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "This is all happening so fast." "Of course. Take the time you need. I'm staying at Mrs. Cooper's boarding house on 3rd Street. Send word if you decide you want to take me up on my offer." He tipped his hat to her. "Good afternoon, Miss Garrett. I hope we'll speak again soon." Penelope watched him walk away, her mind spinning. An hour ago, she had been trapped with no way out. Now she had an option, strange and sudden as it was. But was it really any better to marry one stranger instead of another? At least Samuel Ingram seemed kind, and he had stood up for John Henderson when no one else would. That had to mean something about his character. She rode home slowly, turning the conversation over in her mind. The farmhouse looked shabby in the afternoon light, the paint peeling, the porch sagging slightly on one side. Her father sat on the steps, his head in his hands. "Papa," Penelope said, dismounting and tying Daisy to the fence, "we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about, it's done." "It's not done. Not yet." She sat down beside him, trying to find the right words. "I met someone in town today, a rancher named Samuel Ingram. He offered to marry me instead." Marcus looked up sharply. "What? Who is this man?" "He owns a ranch outside of town. He seems kind, decent. He said he would treat me well, that I would be safe with him." "Does he know about the debt? Did he offer to pay it?" "He can't pay it." "But Papa, that's not my responsibility. You gambled away the farm. That's your burden to bear, not mine." Marcus's face flushed with anger. "How dare you speak to me that way? I'm your father. You owe me respect and you owe me obedience. I've given you both for 21 years. I've kept this house running since Mama died. I've cooked and cleaned and tried to hold things together while you drank and gambled away everything we had. I love you, Papa, but I won't sacrifice myself to fix your mistakes." Penelope's voice was steady, though her heart pounded. "I'm going to marry Samuel Ingram if he'll still have me. Winters will never forgive this. He'll take the farm anyway and he'll make our lives hell. Then that's what will happen, but at least I'll be safe." Penelope stood up. "I'm sorry, Papa. I'm truly sorry it's come to this. But I have to choose my own survival now." She went inside, leaving her father on the porch. Her hands shook as she lit the lamp in her room. What had she just done? She had committed to marrying a man she had spoken to for all of 10 minutes. But when she thought about the alternative, about Thomas Winters and his cold eyes and his dead wives, she knew she had made the only choice she could live with. The next morning, Penelope put on her best dress, a simple blue cotton that her mother had made years ago. She braided her hair carefully and pinned it up, then took the wagon into town. Her father hadn't spoken to her at breakfast, had barely looked at her. The silence was painful, but she held firm to her decision. Mrs. Cooper's boarding house was a large, well-maintained building with a wide front porch and lace curtains in the windows. Penelope knocked on the door, her stomach full of nervous butterflies. Mrs. Cooper herself answered, a plump, cheerful woman with graying hair and shrewd eyes. "Can I help you, dear? I'm looking for Samuel Ingram. Is he here?" "He stepped out about an hour ago, but he should be back soon." "Would you like to wait?" Mrs. Cooper opened the door wider. Come in, come in. I'm just about to put the kettle on for tea." Penelope followed her into a cozy parlor filled with comfortable furniture and the smell of baking bread. Mrs. Cooper disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a tea tray, setting it on the low table between them. "You're Marcus Garrett's daughter, aren't you, Mrs. Cooper said as she poured the tea. "I heard about your troubles. Such a terrible thing what your father did." "Yes, madam." Penelope accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "Samuel is a good man," Mrs. Cooper said, as if reading Penelope's thoughts. "Known him for 5 years now, ever since he bought the Riverside Ranch. He's honest, hard-working, treats his employees well, never raises his voice, never causes trouble. If you're thinking of accepting his offer, you could do much worse." "How did you know about his offer?" "He told me last night after he came back from town. Said he'd made an impulsive proposal to a young lady and hoped he hadn't scared you off." Mrs. Cooper smiled. "He was worried you'd think he was crazy." "I think we're both a little crazy," Penelope admitted. "Getting married is a big step, and we don't know each other at all." "True enough. But sometimes life doesn't give us the luxury of long courtships and getting to know each other gradually. Sometimes we have to take leaps of faith." Mrs. Cooper sipped her tea. "Samuel's been lonely out on that ranch. He works hard, too hard maybe. He needs someone to share his life with, someone to come home to at the end of the day. And you need a safe place to land. Seems to me like you could help each other." Before Penelope could respond, the front door opened and Samuel Ingram walked in. He stopped when he saw her, surprise crossing his face, followed by something that looked like relief. "Miss Garrett, I didn't expect to see you so soon." "I've thought about your offer," Penelope said, setting down her teacup and standing. "I would like to accept if it's still open." Samuel's face broke into a smile, and Penelope saw that she had been right about him. He did smile easily, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and less careworn. "It's still open. I'm glad you came." "I'll leave you two to talk," Mrs. Cooper said, gathering the tea tray and disappearing into the kitchen with surprising speed. Samuel gestured to the sofa. "Please sit. We should discuss the details, make sure we're both clear on what this arrangement means." Penelope sat back down, and Samuel took the chair across from her. "I want to be honest with you," she said. "I'm accepting your offer because I'm desperate. I don't want to mislead you into thinking this is anything more than a practical solution to a terrible problem. I know. I understand. And I'm offering for practical reasons too, though I'll admit I also can't stand the thought of you marrying Winters." Samuel leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "But I want you to know what you're getting into. My ranch is successful, but it's a working ranch. That means early mornings and hard work. I have 12 men working for me, and during roundup and branding season, we hire on more. You'd be running the household, managing the cooking and cleaning, though I can hire help for you if you need it. It's not an easy life. I'm not afraid of hard work. I've been running my father's house for 3 years. Good, that's good." Samuel paused. "I want to be clear about something else too. This would be a real marriage, legally binding, but I'm not going to force anything on you. You'd have your own room. We'd build trust slowly, see if we can make this work as real partners. If in time we grow to care for each other, well, that would be ideal, but I'm not expecting that right away." The relief Penelope felt was almost overwhelming. She had been afraid to ask about that aspect of marriage, afraid of what expectations he might have. "Thank you. That means a great deal to me. When should we do this? Your father's arrangement with Winters is for 2 weeks from now, right?" "Yes. The wedding was supposed to be on Saturday, the 21st. Then let's get married this week before Winters can interfere. How about Friday? That gives us 3 days to make arrangements and get the license." Samuel stood. "I need to ride back to the ranch this afternoon to let my foreman know what's happening, but I can be back Thursday evening. Would that work for you?" "Yes, Friday would be fine." Penelope stood as well, feeling strange and light-headed. Was this really happening? Was she really agreeing to marry this man in 3 days? "You need anything? Money for a dress or anything like that?" "No, thank you. I have a dress that will do." Her mother's wedding dress, actually, carefully preserved in a trunk. It would need some alterations, but she could manage that. Samuel walked her to the door. "Miss Garrett, I know this is strange and sudden, but I promise I'll do my best to be a good husband to you. You won't regret this." "I hope we both won't regret it," Penelope said. "And please call me Penelope." "Penelope." He said her name carefully, as if testing how it felt. "I'll see you Friday morning at the church, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, she agreed. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Penelope told her father what she had decided, and he raged and pleaded by turns, but she stood firm. She knew he was terrified of what Thomas Winters would do when he found out, and part of her felt guilty for that fear. But a larger part of her, the part that wanted to survive, remained resolute. She spent Wednesday altering her mother's dress, letting out the waist and taking in the bodice. The ivory silk was still beautiful, though yellowed slightly with age. On Thursday, she packed her belongings into 2 trunks, everything she owned in the world. Her clothes, her mother's jewelry, a few books, some photographs. It wasn't much to show for 21 years of life. Martha Henderson came by Thursday afternoon with a gift, a beautiful quilt that she had made. "Every bride needs something special," Martha said, hugging Penelope tightly. "Samuel Ingram is a good man. You've made the right choice." "I hope so. I'm terrified, Martha." "Of course you are. Marriage is terrifying even under the best circumstances, but you're strong, Penelope. You'll be fine." Martha pulled back, holding Penelope at arm's length. "And if he turns out to be anything less than kind, you come straight back to me, you hear? I don't care if you're married. You come back, and John and I will figure something out. Thank you for everything." That night Penelope barely slept. She lay in her narrow bed, listening to her father moving around downstairs, the clink of a bottle against a glass. He was drinking, of course. He always drank when things went wrong. She felt a pang of worry for him, but she pushed it aside. She had to focus on her own future now. She had given him too many years already. Friday morning dawned clear and bright, the Kansas sun already warm by 8 o'clock. Penelope bathed and dressed carefully, pinning her hair up in her mother's silver combs. The dress fit perfectly, and when she looked at herself in the small mirror, she saw her mother's face looking back at her, the same green eyes, the same strong chin. "I hope I'm doing the right thing, Mama," she whispered to the empty room. Her father drove her to the church in silence. He looked terrible, his face gray and haggard. At the church steps he finally spoke. "I'm sorry, Penny, for all of it. I never meant for things to turn out this way." "I know, Papa." She kissed his cheek, tasting whiskey and regret. "Take care of yourself." Inside the church, Samuel waited with the minister. He wore a dark suit that looked new, his hair freshly cut, his boots polished. When he saw Penelope, his eyes widened. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You look very nice, too." The ceremony was brief, the words familiar from a dozen weddings Penelope had attended over the years. She repeated her vows in a clear voice, surprised by how steady she sounded. Samuel's voice was steady too, as he promised to love and honor her. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed her cheek gently, a mere brush of his lips. They signed the register, Martha and John Henderson serving as witnesses. Marcus had disappeared, unable to watch his daughter marry someone other than Thomas Winters, unable to face what that might mean. "Ready to go home?" Samuel asked as they left the church. Home. Penelope tested the word in her mind. She had never been to Samuel's ranch. She had no idea what it looked like, what her new life would be like. "I'm ready." Samuel had brought a wagon for her belongings. They loaded her trunks into the back, and Penelope climbed onto the bench seat beside him. As Samuel guided the horses out of town, Penelope looked back once at Selena, at the only home she had ever known, then turned to face forward. Whatever lay ahead had to be better than what she was leaving behind. The ride to the ranch took about an hour. The road wound through open prairie, past fields of wheat and corn, past grazing cattle. Samuel pointed out landmarks as they went. "That's the Henderson place, though it belongs to Winters now. And that creek there, that's the boundary of my property. Everything from here on for the next 7 miles is Riverside Ranch." "It's beautiful," Penelope said, and she meant it. The land rolled gently, dotted with cottonwood trees and crossed by streams. She could see cattle in the distance, brown and white dots against the golden grass. "It's a good piece of land. My father bought it 20 years ago when it was just raw prairie. He and my mother built it up from nothing. When they died, 10 years back, they left it to me. I've been trying to honor their work, expand it, make it even better." "You've been running it alone since then." "Alone in terms of family, yes, but I've had good help. My foreman, Cal Martinez, has been with me since the beginning. He's steady, reliable, knows cattle better than anyone I've met. You'll like him." "What about your men?" How will they feel about suddenly having a woman around? They'll be respectful or they'll find work elsewhere, Samuel said firmly. I run a decent operation. No drinking, no fighting, no crude behavior. I expect my men to act like gentlemen, especially now that you'll be there. They crested a small hill, and Penelope saw the ranch spread out below them. The main house was larger than she had expected, a two-story structure with a wide porch wrapped around three sides. Nearby stood a barn, several outbuildings, a bunkhouse, and corrals. Everything looked well maintained, the fences straight, the buildings painted. It's wonderful, Penelope said softly. I hope you'll be happy here. Samuel guided the horses down the hill and pulled up in front of the house. Welcome home, Penelope. A man emerged from the barn as they arrived, tall and lean with dark hair and a weather-beaten face. Boss, you're back, and this must be your bride. Congratulations to you both. Cal, this is my wife, Penelope. Penelope, Cal Martinez, my foreman and right hand. Pleased to meet you, madam. Cal touched his hat respectfully. I'll help get your things inside. Samuel lifted Penelope down from the wagon, his hands strong around her waist. The touch sent a flutter through her stomach, and she stepped back quickly, flustered. Inside, the house was neat and clean, though it had the bare feeling of a place where only men lived. The furniture was solid but sparse. No curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floors. The kitchen was large, dominated by a cast-iron stove and a long table. Penelope could see the potential here, could imagine what this house could be with some care and attention. It's not much, Samuel said, sounding apologetic. I've let it get pretty basic, but you can change whatever you want, make it a real home. It's a good house, Penelope said. I can see the bones of it. It just needs some warmth. Samuel showed her through the rooms. A parlor with a fireplace and two worn chairs, a dining room with a large table. Upstairs, 4 bedrooms, all empty except for the main bedroom where Samuel clearly slept. He showed her to the bedroom next to his. This will be yours. There's a bed and a dresser, but you'll need other things. We can go into town next week and get whatever you need. He set her trunks down inside the door. I'll let you get settled. Take your time. Come down when you're ready. Penelope spent the next hour unpacking her belongings, hanging her dresses in the empty wardrobe, setting her mother's jewelry box on the dresser. The room had a window that looked out over the prairie, and she could see for miles. Nothing but grass and sky. It was beautiful in its vastness, but also a little frightening. She was so far from everything she knew when she came downstairs. She found Samuel in the kitchen, attempting to prepare lunch. He looked up sheepishly when she entered. I'm not much of a cook. Usually I just heat up beans or fry some bacon. Let me, Penelope said, taking over. She found flour and lard in the pantry, some dried beef, potatoes, and canned tomatoes. Within an hour, she had prepared a simple but hearty meal. Samuel watched her work with obvious appreciation. This is amazing, he said, tasting the beef stew she had made. I haven't had a home-cooked meal like this since my mother died. Well, you'll have them regularly now. That was part of the arrangement, wasn't it? I run the household. Yes, but I didn't expect, he stopped. I'm grateful, Penelope, truly. They ate in companionable silence, and Penelope felt some of her nervousness ease. Samuel had good manners, chewed with his mouth closed, didn't talk while eating. Small things, but they mattered. After lunch, Samuel gave her a tour of the outbuildings. The barn housed 6 horses, all beautiful animals with shining coats and intelligent eyes. The chickens in the coop were healthy and laying well. The root cellar was well stocked with preserves and vegetables. You run a tight ship, Penelope observed. I try. A ranch this size doesn't run itself. Takes constant attention. Samuel leaned against a fence post looking out at his land. I love it, though. Every part of it. The hard work, the challenge, seeing the results of your labor. My father always said that land is the only thing that lasts, the only thing that matters. Is that why you offered to marry me? To protect your ranch? The question came out before Penelope could stop it. Samuel looked at her, surprised. No, I offered to marry you because Thomas Winters is a cruel man and I couldn't stand by and let him hurt another person. The ranch had nothing to do with it. I'm sorry, that was rude of me to ask. It wasn't rude, you have a right to know my motivations. Samuel pushed off from the fence. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her to a small grove of cottonwood trees near the creek that ran through the property. In the shade of the largest tree stood two simple headstones. My parents. They're buried here, on the land they loved. When my time comes, I'll be buried here too. It's peaceful, Penelope said, reading the names on the stones. James and Sarah Ingram. They were good people. Fair, honest kind. They taught me to treat others the way I wanted to be treated, to give a man a fair day's wage for a fair day's work, to stand up for what's right even when it's hard. Samuel's voice was soft with memory. I hope I've lived up to their example. I think you have, Penelope said. Standing up to Winters the way you did, offering to help me. Those are the actions of a good man. I hope you'll still think so a year from now, when you know me better. They walked back to the house as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Penelope prepared dinner while Samuel went over account books at the kitchen table. It felt strange, this domesticity with a man she barely knew, but it also felt oddly right. That night, after they had eaten and cleaned up, Samuel showed Penelope how to bar the doors and check the windows before bed. Just a precaution, he said. We haven't had trouble out here, but it's good to be careful. You think Winters might cause problems? I think Winters is going to be angry when he finds out you married me instead of him, and angry men do stupid things. Samuel's face was serious. But we're safe here. I have 12 men on this ranch, all good in a fight if it comes to that. Winters won't try anything obvious. What will he do to my father? I don't know. But your father made his choices, Penelope. You can't sacrifice yourself to protect him from the consequences. She knew he was right, but the guilt still gnawed at her. She climbed the stairs to her room, changed into her nightgown, and lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the sounds of the house settling around her. Down the hall, she could hear Samuel moving around in his room. Then silence. Penelope closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind raced with everything that had happened. 3 days ago, she had been trapped, facing a future with a cruel man. Now she was married to a stranger who had shown her nothing but kindness. It seemed too good to be true, and part of her waited for the other shoe to drop, for Samuel to reveal some hidden cruelty. But as the days passed, no cruelty emerged. Samuel was exactly as he had presented himself, kind, hardworking, respectful. He worked long hours on the ranch but always came in for the meals Penelope prepared. They ate together, talking about small things, getting to know each other gradually. He told her about the ranch, about his plans to expand the herd, about the new bull he was considering buying. She told him about her childhood, about her mother's death, about the slow decline of her father into drink and gambling. You miss him? Samuel asked one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the stars come out. I miss who he used to be, Penelope said. Before Mama died, he was different. Laughing, full of life, he loved her so much. When she died, it broke something in him. He tried to fill the hole with whiskey and cards, but it never worked. Grief does strange things to people. I know, I just wish he had found a better way to cope. Penelope sighed. I worry about him out there alone. Do you want to visit him? I could take you into town. Not yet, it's too soon. He's probably still angry with me. She paused. Have you heard anything about how Winters reacted? Cal heard some talk in town last week. Winters was furious, apparently. Told everyone who would listen that I had stolen his bride, that he'd make me pay, but he hasn't done anything yet. Yet, Penelope repeated. The word hung in the air between them. 2 weeks after the wedding, Penelope had transformed the house. She had made curtains for all the windows, bright fabric that let in light but provided privacy. She had bought rugs for the floors, cushions for the chairs. She had planted flowers in boxes on the porch. The house felt alive now, warm and welcoming. Samuel noticed the changes, and his appreciation was evident. It's beautiful, Penelope. You've made this place a real home. I'm glad you like it. I was worried I might be overstepping. Not at all. This is your home too. You should make it however you want it. Samuel hesitated. I like coming home now. Seeing the lights on, smelling dinner cooking, knowing you're here. It's nice not to be alone anymore. I like being here, Penelope admitted. I feel safe. That night, as Penelope prepared for bed, she realized how true that statement was. She did feel safe here, safer than she had felt in years. Samuel had never once raised his voice to her, never been anything but patient and kind. He gave her space, respected her boundaries, but she could feel his care in the small things. The way he always held doors for her, the way he made sure there was wood for the stove before he went out for the day, the way he listened when she talked. She was starting to care for him, she realized with a start. Not just as a benefactor who had saved her from Winters, but as a person. She liked his quiet strength, his sense of humor, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. She liked how he treated his men with respect, how he took pride in his work without being arrogant about it. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. This was supposed to be a practical arrangement, not a real marriage. But somewhere along the way, her feelings had started to shift. The trouble came on a Saturday afternoon in mid-September. Penelope was in the kitchen, making preserves from the late-season berries she had picked that morning. Samuel and most of the men were out mending fences on the far side of the property. Only Cal and 2 other men remained near the house, working on repairing the barn roof. Penelope heard the thunder of hoofbeats and looked out the window to see a group of riders approaching fast. Her heart sank when she recognized the man in the lead. Thomas Winters, followed by 6 of his men. She ran to the door and called out to Cal. Trouble coming. Cal was down from the barn roof in seconds, shotgun in hand. The other 2 men, Pete and Jake, positioned themselves near the barn, rifles ready. Penelope's hands shook as she grabbed Samuel's rifle from its place over the fireplace. She had grown up on a farm. She knew how to shoot. Winters pulled his horse up in front of the house, his men fanning out around him. Up close, his anger was palpable, his face red, his eyes hard. Where's Ingram? He demanded. Out on the property, Cal said calmly. What's your business here, Winters? My business is with the woman inside that house. The woman who was promised to me. Winters's eyes found Penelope in the doorway. You thought you could make a fool of me, girl. Thought you could just walk away from our agreement. There was no agreement, Penelope said, fighting to keep her voice steady. You made a deal with my father. I never agreed to anything. Your agreement wasn't needed. Your father gave his word, and his word was binding. Not anymore. I'm married to Samuel Ingram now, legally married. Whatever arrangement you had with my father is void. Winters dismounted, and Cal stepped forward, shotgun raised. That's close enough. State your business and ride on. My business is collecting what's owed to me. Marcus Garrett still owes me $1,500 plus the value of his farm. Since I can't collect through marriage, I'll collect in cash, and I'll add interest. $2,000 due immediately, or I take possession of the property. That's between you and Marcus Garrett, Cal said. Nothing to do with Mrs. Ingram here. Mrs. Ingram. Winters spat the name like a curse. She's a thief and a liar, just like her father, and Ingram is a fool for marrying her. You watch your mouth, Cal said, his finger moving to the trigger of the shotgun. Mrs. Ingram is a lady, and you'll speak of her with respect or not at all. The situation was balanced on a knife's edge. One wrong move, one wrong word, and violence would erupt. Penelope could see the calculation in Winters's eyes, weighing his options. He had 6 men to Cal's 3, but they were on Samuel's property, and any aggression would be hard to justify if it came to legal action. "This isn't over," Winters finally said. He remounted his horse. "Tell Ingram he's made a powerful enemy. And tell Marcus Garrett I'll be collecting my debt, one way or another." He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following. The dust from their departure hung in the air long after they had disappeared. Penelope's legs felt weak. She sank down onto the porch steps, the rifle still clutched in her hands. Cal came over and gently took it from her. "You did good, madam, kept your head." "I was terrified. Being afraid and keeping your head aren't mutually exclusive. You showed backbone." Cal looked toward the direction Winters had gone. "But he's right about one thing. This isn't over." Samuel rode in an hour later, having been alerted by one of the men who had seen Winters and his crew leaving the property. His face was tight with worry as he dismounted. "Are you all right?" He asked Penelope, his hands on her shoulders, searching her face. "I'm fine." Cal and the others handled it. Winters didn't do anything, just threatened and postured. "He'll be back." Samuel's jaw was set. He's not the kind of man to let a slight go unanswered. That night, Samuel positioned 2 men to keep watch on the house in shifts. He also sent word to his other ranch hands to be alert for any trouble. Penelope tried to maintain normalcy, preparing dinner, cleaning up afterward, but she could feel the tension in the air. After dinner, Samuel asked her to join him in the parlor. They sat in the chairs by the fireplace, though it was too warm for a fire. "I'm sorry," Samuel said. "I knew Winters would be angry, but I didn't think he'd come here like that. I should have been here to protect you." "You can't be here every moment," and Cal handled it well. No one was hurt. This time. But Winters isn't going to let this go. Samuel leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I want you to know that I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. If that means hiring more men, if that means sleeping with a gun by the bed, whatever it takes. I know. I trust you." Penelope reached out without thinking and placed her hand over his. The touch sent warmth through her, and she saw Samuel's eyes widen slightly. "You've been nothing but good to me, Samuel. I'm grateful for that." Samuel turned his hand over, clasping hers gently. "It's not just duty anymore, Penelope. Somewhere along the way I've started to care about you, really care about you." Her heart raced. "I've started to care about you too," she admitted. "I didn't expect to, but I do." They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped, something new and fragile forming between them. Then Samuel released her hand and stood. "It's late. You should get some rest. Tomorrow, I'm going to ride into town and talk to the sheriff about Winters's visit. He needs to know that Winters is making threats." The sheriff, a practical man named Ben Morris, listened to Samuel's account with a frown. "Winters hasn't technically done anything illegal yet. Making threats on another man's property is bad behavior, but it's not a crime unless he acts on those threats. So we just wait for him to do something." Samuel's frustration was evident. "Keep your men on alert. Document any further threats or harassment. If he damages property or hurts someone, then I can act." Sheriff Morris sighed. "I know it's not what you want to hear, but my hands are tied unless he breaks the law." Samuel left the sheriff's office feeling no better than when he had entered. He stopped by the mercantile to pick up supplies and ran into Martha Henderson. "Samuel, how's Penelope doing?" "She's doing well. She's made the house a real home." Samuel smiled despite his worries. "She's an amazing woman. I'm so glad she found you." "When I heard what Marcus had done, I was sick with worry. But you've been good to her, I can tell." "I'm trying to be. But Winters came by the ranch yesterday making threats. I'm concerned about what he might do." Martha's expression darkened. "Thomas Winters is a vindictive man. He doesn't forgive perceived slights. You need to be careful, Samuel." "I know. I've got men watching the house and I'm keeping my eyes open, but I can't guard against everything." "Have you thought about what might happen to Marcus Garrett? Winters will go after him too." "That's Marcus's problem. He made his choices. But Penelope will feel responsible if something happens to her father." Martha touched Samuel's arm. "I know he doesn't deserve her concern, but she'll feel it anyway. Maybe you should check on him, make sure he's all right." Samuel didn't want to. Marcus Garrett had nearly sold his daughter to a monster. But Martha was right. Penelope would feel guilty if something happened to him, and the last thing Samuel wanted was for Penelope to carry that burden. He rode out to the Garrett farm, which looked even more run-down than it had a month ago. Marcus was sitting on the porch, a bottle beside him, looking like he had aged 10 years. "Come to gloat?" Marcus asked when he saw Samuel. "No, came to warn you. Winters came by my ranch yesterday making threats. He said he'd collect his debt from you one way or another. You need to be careful." "What does it matter? He owns this place anyway. I'm just living here until he decides to kick me out." Marcus took a drink from the bottle. "I've lost everything. My farm, my daughter, my self-respect. You lost those things through your own choices. Penelope didn't owe you her life to fix your mistakes." "I know." Marcus's voice broke. "I know what I did was wrong. I was desperate and selfish and drunk, and I made a terrible choice, but she was all I had left. She's happy now, safe. You should take some comfort in that." "How can I when I'm the one who put her in danger in the first place?" Marcus looked up at Samuel with bloodshot eyes. "Take care of her, please. She deserves better than she got from me." "I will. You have my word." Samuel turned to leave, then paused. "If you need help if Winters comes after you, send word. I won't leave you to face him alone, even if you probably deserve it." Back at the ranch, Penelope was working in the garden she had started, weeding around the young plants. She looked up when Samuel approached, shading her eyes against the sun. "How did it go in town? The sheriff says his hands are tied unless Winters actually breaks the law. And I stopped by to see your father." Penelope's hands stilled. "How is he?" "Not good, drinking heavily, full of regret." Samuel crouched down beside her. "He knows what he did was wrong. He asked me to take care of you. I should go see him." "Not yet. Not while Winters is still angry. Your father's place is the first spot Winters will watch, expecting you to visit. It's not safe." Samuel took her hand, helping her to her feet. "Give it some time. Let things settle down." But things didn't settle down. Over the next few weeks, there were a series of incidents. Fences cut on Samuel's property, letting cattle wander. A small fire in one of the outbuildings, caught quickly before it could spread. Samuel's men reported seeing Winters's riders watching the ranch from a distance. Samuel hired more men and increased the patrols. The ranch became a fortress, everyone on edge, waiting for the next incident. The tension wore on everyone, but especially on Penelope. She felt responsible, felt that her presence had brought this trouble to Samuel's door. "This is my fault," she said one night as they sat on the porch in the dark, keeping watch. "No, it's not. This is Winters's fault for being a vindictive bastard." Samuel's voice was firm. "You didn't ask for any of this. But if I had just married him, you wouldn't be dealing with this harassment. If you had married him, you'd probably be dead within a year or wishing you were. Don't you dare feel guilty for choosing to survive." Samuel took her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. I don't regret marrying you, Penelope, not for a second. Even with all this trouble, even with winters making my life difficult, I don't regret it. Why not? Because you make me happy. Coming home to you, sitting here with you, talking with you over dinner, all of it makes me happier than I've been in years. You're worth any amount of trouble. Penelope felt tears sting her eyes. You make me happy too. I didn't think I could be happy after everything that happened, but I am. With you, I am. Samuel reached up and gently wiped away a tear that had escaped. His touch was tender, and Penelope found herself leaning into it. He cupped her cheek, his blue eyes searching hers in the darkness. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. "Really kiss you, not just the peck we did at the wedding?" "Yes," Penelope whispered. Samuel leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she didn't want to. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, tentative, a question being asked. Then Penelope responded, her hand coming up to rest on his chest, and the kiss deepened. It was like coming home, like finding something she hadn't known she was looking for. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you," he said. "I tried to keep it practical, tried to maintain distance, but I can't anymore. I love you, Penelope." "I love you too," she said, and the truth of it filled her with wonder. "I didn't think I would, didn't think I could, but I do." They kissed again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. Years of loneliness melted away for both of them, replaced by warmth and connection and the sweet relief of being understood. That night, Penelope didn't go to her own room. She followed Samuel to his, and he looked at her with a question in his eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I want this. I want you." They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies with patience and care. It was nothing like Penelope had feared, nothing like the stories she had heard of painful duty and female suffering. It was beautiful and intimate and right. Afterward, lying in Samuel's arms, feeling his heartbeat under her cheek, Penelope felt at peace for the first time in longer than she could remember. "I never thought I'd have this," she said softly. "Love, real love. I thought I'd be lucky to survive." "You deserve all the love in the world," Samuel said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that." The peace between them made the outside troubles seem more manageable somehow. Knowing they had each other, knowing their feelings were mutual and deep, gave them strength to face whatever came, but the troubles continued. In early October, one of Samuel's men was attacked while riding the property line. He survived but was badly beaten, and the message was clear. This was a warning from Winters. Samuel reported it to the sheriff, who finally agreed to ride out to Winters's ranch and question him. But Winters had alibis for himself and all his men. There was no proof he had ordered the attack. "This can't go on," Penelope said after the sheriff left. "Someone's going to get killed. I know. But I don't know how to stop it without starting an all-out range war, and that would be worse." Samuel paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "Winters has more men, more resources. If it came to a fight, we might not win. Then we need to take away his motivation. We need to pay off my father's debt." "That's $2,000, Penelope. I don't have that kind of cash lying around. Most of my money is tied up in land and cattle. What if we sold some cattle, or took out a loan?" "Selling cattle now would mean selling at a loss. We're weeks away from market time, and a loan would put the ranch at risk. If we couldn't pay it back, we'd lose everything." Samuel shook his head. "I won't risk the ranch, not even for this." Penelope understood, but the helplessness was frustrating. They seemed trapped in this cycle of harassment with no way out. The solution came from an unexpected source. A week later, a well-dressed man rode up to the ranch in a fine buggy. He introduced himself as Edward Grayson. a lawyer from Wichita. I represent a syndicate of cattlemen who are interested in purchasing breeding stock, Grayson explained as they sat in the parlor. We've heard that you have some of the best cattle in the region, Mr. Ingram. We'd like to make you an offer for 20 head of your finest breeding cows and a bull. Samuel named a price that was fair but high. To his surprise, Grayson didn't even try to negotiate. That's acceptable. I can have a bank draft for you within the week. After Grayson left, Samuel sat in stunned silence. That's $3,000, more than enough to pay off Marcus's debt to Winters and have money left over. Are you sure you want to do that? Penelope asked. That's your money, your hard work. You don't owe my father anything. No, but I owe you peace of mind, and I owe myself peace on my own property. If paying off this debt gets Winters to back off, it's worth 20 head of cattle. Samuel pulled Penelope into his arms. Besides, it's our money now, not just mine. We're partners in this. When the bank draft arrived, Samuel rode into town to the bank where Winters kept his accounts. He had the bank draft made out to Winters and included a note demanding a release of all claims on the Garrett property. Winters was at the bank when Samuel arrived, a coincidence that Samuel suspected was not really a coincidence at all. Word traveled fast in small towns. "Come to beg for mercy?" Winters asked, his voice dripping with contempt. "Come to pay off Marcus Garrett's debt." Samuel handed the bank draft to the clerk. $2,000 in full settlement of all debts owed by Marcus Garrett to Thomas Winters, and I'll need a written release of the property deed. Winters's face flushed red. "I don't want your money." "That's unfortunate because the debt is now paid. The clerk is a witness. You can accept the money and release the property, or you can refuse and have no legal claim to either the money or the property." Samuel's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "Your choice." The clerk looked between the two men nervously. "Mr. Winters, the payment is valid. If you refuse it, you forfeit your claim." Winters snatched the bank draft from the clerk's hand. "Fine, the debt is paid, but don't think this is over, Ingram." "Oh, I think it is. You have no more leverage." "Penelope is my wife, legally married. Her father's debt is paid. You have no reason to harass us anymore." Samuel leaned in close, lowering his voice so only Winters could hear. "And if you try, if you send your men to my property again, if you cause any more trouble, I'll make sure everyone in this county knows exactly what happened to your first wife. I've talked to the doctor who examined her body. He'll testify that her injuries weren't consistent with a fall. Think about that before you make your next move." Samuel walked out of the bank without waiting for a response. His hands were shaking with adrenaline, but he felt triumphant. He had finally stood up to Winters in a way that mattered, in a way that would actually make a difference. He rode out to Marcus Garrett's farm next. Marcus was in the barn, and Samuel could tell from his relative steadiness that he was sober, or at least less drunk than usual. "Your debt to Winters is paid," Samuel said without preamble. "The property is yours again, free and clear." Marcus stared at him. "What? How? I paid it, sold some cattle. The deed will be returned to you by the end of the week." "Why would you do that, after what I did to Penelope?" "Because she worried about you. Because she'd feel guilty if Winters destroyed you, even though you deserve it. And because I wanted to remove Winters's leverage once and for all." Samuel crossed his arms. "But don't think this means I've forgiven you for what you tried to do. You tried to sell your daughter to a monster. That's not something I'll ever forget. I know. I don't expect forgiveness, I just—" Marcus sat down heavily on a hay bale. "Thank you for taking care of her when I failed to, for being the man I should have been." "Stop drinking," Samuel said. "Stop gambling, get your life together. You want to thank me. Do that, be someone your daughter can be proud of again." Samuel rode back to the ranch feeling lighter than he had in weeks. When he told Penelope what he had done, She cried and kissed him and told him he was the best man she had ever known. True to Samuel's hope, the harassment stopped. Winters seemed to finally accept that he had lost this particular battle. Life on the ranch returned to normal, or rather, to a new normal that was better than anything Penelope had dared to hope for. As winter approached, Penelope and Samuel settled into a comfortable rhythm. They worked together during the day, Samuel on the ranch and Penelope managing the household. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, talking, reading, simply being together. Their love grew deeper, more certain with each passing day. In November, Penelope realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She told Samuel over breakfast one morning, watching his face anxiously for his reaction. His expression went through several changes in rapid succession: surprise, wonder, delight, and then concern. "Are you happy about this?" he asked carefully. "I know we didn't exactly plan it." "I'm happy," Penelope said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "Terrified but happy, are you?" "I'm over the moon." Samuel came around the table and pulled her into his arms. "We're going to have a baby, a family. I can't believe it. We should see the doctor in town, make sure everything's all right. We'll go tomorrow. And we'll tell Cal and the men, start preparing. We'll need to set up a nursery and you'll need to take it easier around the house." And Samuel stopped, laughing at himself. "I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I?" "A little, but it's sweet." Penelope kissed him softly. "We have time to figure it all out." Over the winter months, Samuel fussed over Penelope constantly, worried about her health, about the baby's health, about everything. Penelope found it endearing, if sometimes exasperating. She felt fine, strong, and healthy, but Samuel insisted she not overwork herself. He converted one of the spare bedrooms into a nursery, building a cradle with his own hands, carefully sanding and finishing the wood until it was smooth as silk. Penelope sewed tiny clothes, blankets, and quilts. The house filled with anticipation and love. In March, on a warm spring day when the prairie was turning green again, Penelope went into labor. Samuel rode like mad to fetch the doctor, and then paced outside the bedroom like a caged animal while the doctor and Martha Henderson, who had come to help, attended to Penelope. After hours that felt like years, Samuel heard the thin, reedy cry of a newborn. Martha appeared at the door, smiling. "You have a son, and Penelope is doing fine. You can come in now." Samuel entered the bedroom on shaking legs. Penelope lay in bed, exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he approached, her eyes shining with tears. "Samuel, meet your son." Samuel looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and perfect. The baby's eyes were closed, his mouth working as he nuzzled against Penelope. "He's beautiful," Samuel whispered, touching one tiny hand with his finger. The baby's fingers closed around his, and Samuel felt his heart expand in a way he hadn't known was possible. "He's absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Penelope asked. "I was thinking about James after my father, if that's all right with you." "James Ingram, I like that." "It's a strong name." Penelope shifted the baby so Samuel could hold him. "Here, take him. He should know his father." Samuel gathered the baby into his arms carefully, as if he were made of glass. James opened his eyes, and Samuel found himself looking into dark blue depths that seemed to look right into his soul. "Hello, son," Samuel said softly. "I'm your papa, and I promise you I'm going to do everything in my power to give you a good life. You'll grow up knowing you're loved, knowing you're safe. You'll never doubt that you matter." Over the next few months, the ranch became a place of joy and new life. James was a healthy baby, growing quickly, his eyes gradually changing from newborn blue to the green of his mother's. Samuel was a devoted father, taking every opportunity to hold his son, to sing to him, to tell him stories even though James was far too young to understand. Penelope watched her husband with their son and fell even more deeply in love with him. This was the man she had married out of desperation, the man she had barely known. Now he was her partner, her love, the father of her child. Life had a way of surprising you, she thought. Sometimes the darkest moments led to the brightest futures. In June, nearly a year after their hasty marriage, Marcus Garrett came to visit. He had been sober for months, Samuel had heard, and the farm was starting to look better, the fields planted and tended properly. Penelope was nervous about seeing him, but she had agreed when Samuel suggested inviting him. Marcus stood at the door with his hat in his hands, looking older and grayer than Penelope remembered. When she opened the door, he looked at her with such naked regret that she felt her anger soften. "Hello, Papa," she said. "Penny, you look wonderful, happy." His voice broke slightly. "I'm so sorry for everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better, to be the man I should have been. I know, Samuel told me you've stopped drinking. 6 months sober, longest I've been since your mother died, and I've started going to church again, trying to find my way back to some kind of decency." Marcus twisted his hat in his hands. "I heard you have a baby, a boy. Would you like to meet your grandson?" Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "You'd let me come in, Papa." They sat in the parlor and Penelope brought James out. The baby was awake and alert, watching everything with curious eyes. When Marcus held him, tears streamed down his weathered face. "He's beautiful, perfect. What's his name?" "James, after Samuel's father." "James, that's a good name." Marcus looked up at Penelope. "Thank you for letting me be part of his life. I know I don't deserve it." "Everyone deserves a second chance," Penelope said. "You just have to prove you're worthy of it." Marcus visited regularly after that, slowly rebuilding his relationship with his daughter. He never drank when he came to the ranch, never spoke of his past mistakes unless Penelope brought them up. He was gentle with James, patient and kind. Penelope could see glimpses of the father she had known before her mother's death, and it gave her hope. As James grew, the ranch prospered. Samuel's careful management and hard work paid off, and the herd grew. He hired more men, built new outbuildings, bought more land. The Riverside Ranch became known throughout the region as one of the best-run operations in Kansas. Penelope flourished too. She had found her place, her purpose. She managed the household efficiently, raised her son with love and patience, and supported Samuel in his endeavors. She had friends now, women from town who came to visit, who brought their children to play with James. She had a community, a place where she belonged. Thomas Winters remained a distant threat, but never acted on his animosity. Rumors said he had been forced to sell off parts of his ranch to cover debts, that his business was declining. Penelope felt no satisfaction in his struggles, only relief that he was no longer part of her life. On their second wedding anniversary, Samuel surprised Penelope with a gift. It was a locket, gold and delicate, with their initials engraved on the front. Inside were 2 tiny photographs, one of Samuel and one of James. "So you can carry us with you always," Samuel said as he fastened it around her neck. "I don't need a locket for that. You're both in my heart constantly." But Penelope treasured the gift, touching it often throughout the day, a tangible reminder of her blessings. That night, after James was asleep and they lay in bed together, Penelope said, "Did you ever imagine that day you offered to marry me that it would turn out like this?" "I hoped," Samuel said, pulling her close. "I hoped we might grow to care for each other, might build something real, but I never imagined I'd love you this much, that being with you would make every day brighter." "I feel the same. You saved me, Samuel. Not just from Winters, but from a life of fear and unhappiness. You gave me joy, love, a family, Everything I have, everything I am now, is because you were brave enough to step in. You saved me too, Samuel said. I was lonely, going through the motions of life but not really living. You brought light into my world. You made this house a home. You gave me a son, a future. We saved each other, Penelope. They made love slowly, tenderly, a celebration of everything they had built together. Afterward, Penelope lay in Samuel's arms and thought about the twisting path that had brought her here. The terror of her father's betrayal, the desperation of her situation, the leap of faith she had taken in marrying a stranger. If someone had told her, a year and a half ago, that she would be this happy, she wouldn't have believed them. But here she was, deeply loved and deeply in love with a beautiful son and a good life. The Wild West was a harsh place, unforgiving and dangerous. But it could also be a place of new beginnings, of second chances, of finding love in the most unexpected circumstances. 3 years later, Penelope stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching Samuel teach their son to ride. James, now 4 years old, sat on a gentle mare, his face a mixture of concentration and delight. Samuel walked beside the horse, his hand on the reins, giving instruction and encouragement. In Penelope's arms, their daughter Sarah slept peacefully, oblivious to the activity in the yard. Born the previous autumn, Sarah had her father's blue eyes and her mother's dark hair. She was a content baby, easy and sweet-tempered. Cal rode up, dismounting to join Penelope on the porch. "He's a natural," he said, watching James. "Kid's got good hands already." "He wants to be just like his father," Penelope said. "Follows Samuel everywhere, copies everything he does. Could do worse for a role model. Your husband's a good man, one of the best I've known. I know I'm very lucky." "Luck had nothing to do with it. You both made choices, took risks." "That's not luck, that's courage," Cal smiled. "The ranch is doing well. Samuel's talking about buying another section of land to the east. Good grazing, water access, would bring the total to near 10,000 acres. It's amazing how much it's grown. When I first came here, I thought it was already big. Now it's one of the largest operations in the county. Success built on hard work and smart decisions. Samuel's got a gift for this business." Cal tipped his hat. "Well, I'd best get back to work. Just wanted to let you know the fence crew finished the north pasture." After Cal left, Penelope continued to watch her husband and son. Samuel caught her looking and waved, his face breaking into the smile she loved. James waved too, shouting, "Mama, look, I'm riding. I see you, sweetheart. You're doing wonderfully." Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, difficult moments, challenges to face. But the foundation they had built, the love they shared, made everything manageable. Penelope had learned that safety wasn't just about avoiding danger. It was about having someone who would stand with you when danger came. Someone who would fight for you, protect you, cherish you. That evening, after the children were in bed, Penelope and Samuel sat on the porch as they often did, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. "I was thinking," Samuel said, "maybe we should take a trip this summer. Go to Denver, let the kids see the mountains. It would be good to get away for a bit, just be a family." "That sounds wonderful. James would love it, and Sarah's old enough to travel now. We could visit that photography studio, get a family portrait done. Something to hang on the wall to remember this time." "I'd like that." Penelope leaned her head on Samuel's shoulder. "I want to remember everything, every moment of this life we've built." "Do you ever think about what might have happened? If you had married Winters, or if you'd refused and tried to run?" "Sometimes. But only to remind myself how lucky I am, how close I came to losing all this." Penelope lifted her head to look at Samuel. "You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have. A real partnership where I'm valued and respected. Love that makes me feel safe and cherished. Children who will grow up knowing what a good man looks like, what a good marriage looks like. And you gave me the same. You took a chance on a stranger with a crazy proposal. You trusted me when you had no reason to. You made this ranch into a real home, made my life full and rich. Samuel kissed her softly. I thank God every day that you walked through that door and said yes. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The prairie stretched out around them, vast and wild, full of both danger and possibility. But here, on this porch, in this moment, they were safe. They were home. The years continued to unfold, bringing both joys and sorrows as life always did. Marcus Garrett remained sober and became a devoted grandfather, spending hours teaching James about farming and telling him stories about his grandmother Sarah, for whom the baby had been named. The ranch continued to grow and prosper, weathering droughts and harsh winters, always bouncing back stronger. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved horses and the land as much as his father did. Sarah was bright and bold, unafraid of anything, keeping her parents on their toes with her adventurous spirit. 3 years after Sarah's birth, Penelope gave birth to another son, whom they named William after Samuel's grandfather. Through it all, the love between Penelope and Samuel only deepened. They faced challenges together. Difficult calvings, harsh weather, economic downturns, the normal trials of raising a family. But they faced them as a team, supporting each other, strengthening each other. On their 10th anniversary, Samuel took Penelope back to the church where they had married. It was just the two of them, having left the children with Cal and his wife for the day. I wanted to renew our vows, Samuel said as they stood in the empty church. The first time we said the words out of necessity, out of practicality. I want to say them again now, meaning every syllable with my whole heart. They stood before the altar, holding hands, and spoke the traditional vows. But this time, when Samuel promised to love and honor Penelope, when he pledged himself to her for better or worse, for richer or poorer in sickness and health, Penelope could hear the absolute truth in his voice. And when she made the same promises, she meant them with every fiber of her being. Afterward, as they walked out of the church into the bright Kansas sunshine, Samuel stopped and turned to Penelope. I need you to know something, he said seriously. What started as an impulsive offer to help someone in trouble became the best decision I ever made. You are the love of my life, Penelope. My partner, my best friend, the mother of my children. Everything good in my life traces back to you. Penelope felt tears gathering in her eyes. And you are mine, the man who stepped in when I needed someone most. The man who promised me kindness and has delivered on that promise every single day for 10 years. I love you, Samuel Ingram. I loved you then, I love you now, and I'll love you for the rest of my life. They kissed there on the church steps, in the same place where they had stood as nervous strangers a decade ago. But they weren't strangers anymore. They were everything to each other, bound by love and choice and the life they had built together. As they rode home to the ranch, to their children and the life that awaited them, Penelope thought about the girl she had been at 21. Terrified, trapped, facing a future that seemed to hold only darkness. That girl never could have imagined the happiness that awaited her, the love that would transform her life. But she had taken the chance. She had said yes to a stranger's unexpected offer. She had chosen to trust, to hope, to believe in the possibility of something better. And that choice had led her here, to this moment, to this life, to this love. The Wild West was indeed wild, unpredictable and dangerous. But it was also a place where people could reinvent themselves, where second chances were possible, where love could bloom in the most unlikely circumstances. Penelope had found her second chance, and she had seized it with both hands. Now, as the ranch came into view, as she saw her children running out to greet them, as she felt Samuel's hand squeeze hers with affection and joy, Penelope knew that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The cruel man who had tried to claim her was a distant memory. The rancher who had stepped in and promised her kindness had become her whole world, and they lived happily, deeply, and truly for all the days of their lives. Their love story became part of the history of the Riverside Ranch, passed down through generations. The story of how Samuel Ingram had stepped in when Penelope Garrett needed saving, and how in saving her, he had found his own salvation. The story of two people who had started as strangers but became so much more, building a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone, buried side by side under the cottonwood trees, on the land they had loved and shared, together at last and forever.